This week on our AMP America Week in Review, a comedian's endorsement sends shockwaves through the liberty movement, and Trump trades his golden tower for a fast food counter. But first, we examine why major newspapers are breaking decades of tradition and why their journalists are freaking out. Is this the beginning of a new era in American politics? You don't want to miss it. Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show.
Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show.
Well, good morning and happy Saturday there, folks. Brian Nichols here on another fun-filled episode of the Brian Nichols Show. This is our AMP America Week in Review. We are coming to you live from our Cardio Miracle Studios here in lovely Eastern Indiana. The Brian Nichols Show, yes, is sponsored by Cardio Miracle. If you're looking for the best heart health supplement in the world to help lower your blood pressure, lower that resting heart rate while improving the pump in the gym and other places as well, stick around. We're going to talk about Cardio Miracle later, but first we're going to dig into today's topics of conversation. Yeah, lots on the plate today, and I'm so thankful to have my forever co-host returning here to the program, Editor-in-Chief from AMP America, Remso W. Martinez. Welcome back, buddy. How you been?
I am doing great, Brian. It's good to be behind the mic again. I feel like you miss a week of news and you might as well wake up like Robin Williams from Jumanji, like, where am I? What year is this?
You ever see the meme? It's like, oh, my aunt just woke up from her 15-year coma. And then she goes, wait, the guy from Home Alone? He's president? Yeah, I imagine it's something like that.
I watched in 2020, I watched a show on Netflix called like How to Survive the Apocalypse or something. And it was filmed. It was a Nat Geo series from like the 2000s, like the 9/11 era. And in the show, they talk about a viral pandemic. And at the end of each episode where they're talking about like meteors and terminators and like global warming and all that stuff, they give like a likelihood meter. And the likelihood is always like, you know, something crazy. It's either super high or super low. And for the pandemic thing, they were like, the odds of this is less than 1% of 1%. And my mom and I are just sitting on the couch looking at each other like, yeah, that didn't really age well.
Yeah, I always watch movies from yesteryear now with a little bit of skepticism, like, how much were they just trying to plant some seeds of what could happen, / how much of it was just like, oh, this sounds like a good plot. And then you look to see some of the stuff that's come true. And yeah, definitely raises an eyebrow.
One of my favorite movies is iRobot. A couple of weeks ago with all the Elon stuff, I was like, oh my gosh.
We are here now. We are in iRobot world. Yeah, dude, the world's definitely getting crazier, and I think it's going to continue getting crazier. We're recording here today, October 26th, Saturday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern, as the sun rises. And with that, we're getting close to an election here, Remso. Things are starting to heat up, and you're starting to see some of the, dare I say, the fence sitters starting to now find a cozy seat on one side or the other. Now, I'm going to just, for the start of this conversation today, sorry, Libertarians, we are the perennial fence sitters in this conversation. There you go. Remso is not sitting on any fences. When you look at the Libertarian movement, we have there's two different approaches. One is this idealistic approach of, well, if everybody just votes their principles, follows what they believe in.
I can't wear this the entire show. I'm gonna look like one of those boomers on like a late night YouTube stream.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for your 2 cents on how Trump's the best. No, but like
communism.
Communism's the worst. But no, Libertarians, we see this where they're like, oh, well, if everybody just votes for Gary Johnson, Joe Jorgensen, Chase Oliver, then they would win if they just voted their principles. And then there is the other camp, the understanding that there is a pragmatic, real life application to libertarianism. And with that, right, it's not that we're trying to say that libertarianism is not an end goal that we want to obtain, though I know some folks absolutely say no. However, looking at the current political scenario, the situation we find ourselves in, Libertarians are not going to be winning any election anytime soon from a national perspective. So with that being said, we've seen one of, if not the largest voices in the liberty movement come out here recently, and by recently I mean last week, saying he's no longer sitting on the proverbial fence. He's jumping into one camp, and that is one Dave Smith saying he's going to vote for Donald Trump. Let's take a listen.
So, listen, man, and I just want to preface this by saying this is not me walking back the things that I said on yesterday's episode. I still stand by everything I said there, but I think I might vote for Trump.
Wow. That's a bombshell of breaking news.
I'll tell you what it did. And it's funny because literally when we finished the show yesterday, it's like an hour after we were done recording or something like that. I was just literally just on Twitter and I saw Kamala Harris campaigning with Liz Cheney. And I'll play you the clip in a second. And I was just so disgusted by it that I was just like, oh, you. Like, God damn, do you just deserve to lose? So listen, man.
All right. So that is the clip here. I'm going to pause Mr. Smith there. So Mr. Smith goes to Trump world. That's where we're at right now, Remso. And I get it. I'm leaning that way myself. And I've seen, and by the way, I've said this many times in the show, I'm genuinely an undecided voter. I'm undecided whether or not I'm going to do my protest vote, not for Chase Oliver, but for RFK Jr., or if I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. And that's because I look at where we are right now as a country. I look where we are as a movement, the Liberty Movement. Liberty Movement has the coalescing figures, Remso, Vivek Ramaswamy, Rand Paul, Ron Paul, like Dave Smith. They're all coalescing around Trump. And there's a reason behind it. I have my thoughts, but give me your initial feedback on Dave jumping into Team Trump.
I think it says less about Dave Smith and it says more about one other individual in terms of last minute endorsements. I mean, last minute endorsements. Thomas Massey.
Yes.
Thomas Massey.
I forgot about him. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes. Thomas Massey just
went ahead and issued a statement this week saying that he endorsed Donald Trump. And keep this in mind, Rand Paul, and whether he wanted to say it or not, I was going to say something really mean. So I'm going to refrain from that. But his chief of staff, Doug Stafford, he took a lot of money from RFK. That's public record. He took a lot of money from RFK. It was very clear that, Rand Paul and Massey were probably more on the RFK train, this year. And they really had to get Trump to make some concessions in order for them to endorse him. And I think that was all for the right reasons, because, much like you, I was in the RFK camp because I was not convinced that Trump understood how badly I don't blame him for the lockdowns. I blame him for not identifying that he should have done some stuff differently. And that's armchair quarterbacking. But at the time, it's like, and I watch old videos of myself in interviews from 2020, like we were figuring things out by the minute. And I don't believe that Trump holds as much responsibility as some people blame him for the lockdowns, because when you really look at it, it was Democratic governors, mayors, city councils that were really the ones making 2020 what 2020 was.
Which, by the way, just to pop in here, that's why I moved, right? And I just the autism on this other side of the political camp saying like, oh, well, Trump put all these into place. No, he didn't. He guided certain policy in certain areas, or he used his bully pulpit, but Trump was not the one putting these actions into place. It was Mayor of Philadelphia, Jim Kenney. It was Governor Tom Wolf. It was Governor Phil Murphy. Granted, I was in the Northeast at that point in time, but I saw it firsthand. And then I come out here in 2021 to the We Are Libertarians pool party back when I was part of the Wall Network, and you were out here, right? We hung out, and the world was keeping on like it was nothing happened. I was like, that doesn't work.
So weird. Indiana did not. People in Indiana and the Midwest, even here in Wisconsin, like their 2 weeks to flatten the curve was really like 2 weeks. Whereas
an actual 2 week period.
Yeah. Whereas it did not even feel like things were back to quote unquote normal in Virginia, where I was living, until 2022. And I just spent a weekend in Virginia. Yeah, I go to Virginia like during the holidays and stuff, and like the number of people still wearing masks and everything. It's like I've said this since then. It's like they almost miss it. They almost miss the pandemic fear and everything, and it's a sick, pervasive thing. But back to what I was saying, it's like, for Rand Paul and Thomas Massey to basically hold out and curb Trump's, opinions on that, some of his stances, which I really think we should thank RFK Jr. for, because if RFK Jr. had not, met Trump where he was and tried to get him to really, enlarge in the movement and make it more populist and identify that, we can't forget it happened, and we need to admit our faults. I mean, I watched the Joe Rogan interview last night. I fell asleep around hour 2, but like,
with who did he interview?
He interviewed Donald Trump, which is just freaking wild.
And that right there should have been the leading story for today, but we'll talk about it later.
I mean, it's going to be a leading story all week, but like, Trump starts admitting fault. He's like, I hired the wrong people.
I hired the neocons. I shouldn't have hired John Bolton, that wacko, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think it takes a lot of moral courage from people like Dave Smith. I think he lacked moral courage in a lot of things. And even in some later tweets, he's like, vote for Trump or write in Ron Paul. Like, it's whatever. It's like, no, like you either identify what it is or not. If you're going to go write in Ron Paul, just stay home. Just stay home. Because, for someone like, Paul or Massey, like they're still in political office. There are consequences to the things they do or don't do. And I mean, Thomas Massey, it's like people should look at him as like the one person where it's like, if there's any libertarian who like still brings people together, it's Thomas Massey. If you don't like Thomas Massey, we can't be friends. Like, that's the thing. So for Massey to come out and do this within the same time that Dave Smith went ahead and did it, it's like, Mike Cernovich on X went ahead and said this. He's like, for Rogan to interview him after everyone else has years later, when Trump is suddenly popular a week and a half before the election, it lacks moral courage. I don't apply that to Thomas Massey, but I do apply that to Dave Smith. I do apply that to a lot of other people, Rogan included. But it's at this point now where it's like we're in the situation we're in. And another part of that Trump interview that I do remember last night is they were talking about his, ambitions for politics. And for the first time, I think in a decade, Trump actually talked about his stint with the Reform Party in 2000. And Trump very much clearly said, like, this is a two-party system. I don't like it. It's not fair, but it is what it is. And I remember him saying that even in 2012. In 2012, when they were talking about Trump possibly running as either a Republican or independent, he had even addressed that on Fox and Friends. He's like, well, I don't like either. I agree. I have friends on both. I'm a Republican, but like, I think we need to, address that this is a two-party system. And if we want real change, it's not typically going to come from this, to paraphrase. And like, that's the truth. That's just where we're at. It's just there's no other way around it. I mean, I wrote a whole book about people voting their conscience and voting how they believe they should vote. And if that's a third party vote, fine. But like, you have to accept the consequences, and you have to understand that, given the circumstance, yeah, vote your conscience. But if your conscience is damning everybody, like, really address that. It's like, I really would not say that after even this election, the Republicans have my support. I told you on the last time that we recorded together that I voted down ballot Republican for the first time in my life. That may only be that time. I don't know. But that's because ultimately I'm a true independent voter. I will vote election to election. And I sat out the 22 midterms because I said the Republicans have not done anything to address the pandemic, the lockdowns, everything going on of China. They have not done anything to earn a vote in 2022. So I didn't vote then. But this is this situation right now that we're in. And we see what they want to do. We see what they think about us. They brought out Hillary Clinton from the crypt, and she went ahead and called us all Nazis again. Like, this is those people.
We're live here on our week in review, part of the AMP America Week in Review. Yes, Remso's joining me here today, and I agree, Remso. I found myself, so my political evolution over the past, I'll say 10 years or so, I came in to the greater liberty movement as one of those old neocon folks in the GOP. And it wasn't even so much neocon. I kind of grew up in that world, right? That was just like the status quo. So it's not that I was like enthusiastic about this shit. It was just, that's what was. So then you start to question things. Romney loses the 2012 election. You really start to dig into the whys, right? And I start to uncover more of this libertarian ethic. Start learning more about Rand Paul. Like, oh yeah, Ron Paul. That's the guy I remember seeing in the 2008 debate stage, standing up against Rudy Giuliani. Oh, okay, let's learn more from him. And starting to go more into the actual ism of what these guys believe. But the ism itself is not the political party, right? The ism is the guiding light that they're following when they're trying to enact policy, but they're doing so leveraging a platform that is backed up by a party. And this political party in this case was the GOP, and that was the best means for some type of small L libertarian with libertarianism as their philosophy to get actually elected to office and get their ideas into office, right? And we see this time and again. Any libertarian who's been elected has been elected with a big R next to their name. Justin Amash, Rand Paul, Thomas Massie. Go through the list. I mean, even some other folks out there like Mike Lee, who's not necessarily a libertarian, but he's much more constitutionalist, right? So this ethic, this ethos.
Mike Lee didn't even vote for Trump in 2016.
Exactly. He was anti-Trump. Him, Ted Cruz. And again, I'm not saying
I've got a real damning story about Mike Lee. I actually don't like Mike Lee. I don't know if I can say it publicly, but like I've known some shit about him for 10 years. That is just like he's a bandwagoner. He's a bandwagoner. If there's any Republican that is on our team, but I don't respect them, it's Mike Lee.
Well,
I'm sorry, I get triggered with him.
There's a grenade that Remso just tossed out there. But no, like my ethos going into this election, Remso, has been I'm a libertarian. I believe in libertarian ideas, to the extent that they actually work in the real world, right? So we need to be able to walk and chew gum, say, I believe we should be going towards this North Star. But on our path there, if we realize we're not going north and we're actually going east, let's take a moment and reflect as to why, right? Is it theism? Is it other factors that have come into the equation that we're not considering? Maybe it's a combination of both. But with that, I'm not using the ism to decide who I'm voting for. What I'm doing is using the ism to guide me towards the party or the platform, or in this case, the candidate who's going to have the most ability to get the ism into actual policy, right? And right now, by and large, there is no question, as you see the coalescing of all these libertarians like Rand Paul, Ron Paul, Thomas Massie, Vivek Ramaswamy around the Trump campaign, that tells me that there is some way for us to actually now have some more of a voice at the table, get more of our ideas, not just into the ethos to get it out there and say, hey, oh, look at what we can talk about. But now it turns into, let's get this into policy, right? So I say all that. When this election ends, I'm very much going to just go back to this politically independent mindset and then call balls and strikes. If Trump wins, I'm going to call Trump out when he does bad things. I'm also going to cheer him when he does good things, just like we did from 2016 to 2020. And just like we have done with Biden. Now, granted, Brian, you've been very tough on Biden. You've been very tough on Harris. Because they're not at all in the libertarian ethos. Exactly. Like they are the antithesis to liberty. And we have to be able to objectively acknowledge this. Like, I hate this whole Trump and the Make America Great movement, that there's some unique threat to the American democracy. My friends, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, all of your favorite Democratic establishment folks, they are in tandem working with the deep state, which does exist because they've told us themselves in their own words they exist. And they've worked hand in hand, the Department of Justice, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, to target their political opponents, to throw political opponents in jail. Steve Bannon sitting in jail right now. That happened. Like, I don't know how the left can continue this like narrative of like Trump's going to get into office and elect all of his he's going to jail all of his political opponents. My brother in Christ, you guys are doing that right now. what's like, how do you, and again, Remso, I know I'm ranting to the choir here, but like, this is the part that drives me crazy, is that there is this inability for folks, specifically, and I'm just going to say the more politically independent, libertarian leaning group of folks that we have interacted with over the years, to acknowledge the fact that there is a very real objective difference from a pro-liberty perspective from Trump to someone like Harris and Biden. Not saying Trump is like a libertarian icon, but when you just objectively look at where he goes versus where the other side has gone, it's night and day. There is no question. And I just don't get how is it I don't know, Remso, answer this question for me. Is it there an appeal to the lefty friend out there? Like, they're like, look at me. I'm not these crazy conservative libertarian MAGA folks. I actually think, that Trump's terrible because he doesn't support 100% of what I believe. Like, what is it that continues this hate? I don't get it.
One of the lawyers who was part of the investigative team against Trump on January 6th, who was not a Republican. I forgot his name. People can go ahead and do J6 lawyer endorses Donald Trump. He was on CNN talking about that. And his ultimate thing came down to, we know that the January 6th riot was ultimately an inside job and mostly fraudulent. And it was propagated by the media and it was used as a tactic. And that ultimately, that's just what it was. And that the bigger threat to our country is the sitting administration. There are two people that I want to emphasize. One is someone I went to college with who was in the news for a little bit in 2016, because you had a lot of college Republican chapters in 2016 when I was at Liberty University who across the country were not endorsing Donald Trump. And CNN used them as useful idiots to go ahead and continue to push this whole, never Trump movement, which I said I was part of at the time. It's out there. I don't deny it. But you've got a friend of mine who was like the most anti-Trump person in 2016. And I was essentially on board with him. But I said, let's give it a shot. And 4 years later, in 2020, I casted a vote for Donald Trump. And he didn't. I genuinely think he voted for Biden. Or he voted for third party, or he just didn't vote. The other day, I see him on Twitter. And he works within one of these like Koch funded, advocacy think tanks that don't really do shit. He's like, well, where's
Can you give me his initials just so
I'll send it to you later. Send it to you later. He's a nobody, but actually I can't tell you the organization. I don't want to be that guy who leads people on and stuff. I'll tell you later. I can't say it out loud, but
I have a theory.
I'll tell you later.
Be good.
Sorry, folks. It is an inside thing. I don't want to be that guy, but I'm that guy today. But he was like, "Where's my I have not voted in 3 elections sticker?" And I'm like, dude, how entitled are you? How privileged are you to look around and say, yeah, you know what? This all sucks, but I hate Trump.
By the way, you just said something, and this has been my point. I've raised this a million times. If you continue, not you, Remso, but the folks who look at J6, right? If you are going to the ballot box and January 6th is your number one issue, you are the embodiment of privilege. Like, I know the left likes to talk about privilege a lot, right? Like, oh, you're a white man, you've experienced privilege. Let's talk about real privilege, right? Real privilege is voting on a specific issue like January 6th that literally doesn't impact anyone except the political elites who have made this a number one issue for them and have brainwashed the masses to make this their number one issue with some veiled threat that without this being the number one issue, there is an inherent danger or threat to our democracy, right? Where the real person out there who is suffering under the current status quo, their mortgages are through the roof. They can't pay their bills. They're struggling to make ends meet. They're going to the grocery store saying, how am I going to feed my family? They're working 4 jobs. They're exhausted. And when they go to the ballot booth, do you think that they're sitting there saying, all right, voting on the number one issue today, January 6th? Absolutely not. They're focused on, we call it in the world of sales, your bed bug issues, right? If you had bed bugs, Remso, in your house, I can guarantee it's the number one thing you and your wife are concerned about, right? Because bed bugs suck and they get everywhere. the same thing is true to your average person who, when they're going into the voting booth, they're not thinking of January 6th. They're thinking of what's the main thing that is hurting me right now, and is there any way that this candidate's going to be able to help solve that? And if we don't address that, like, what are we doing?
Yeah, and I mean, when people even talk about it, it's like this veiled, unspoken thing where it's like they even try and say that Trump was remotely responsible for that. He was not responsible for that. I said that 4 years ago. I've said that since. He was not responsible for that. And anyone who still believes that is not looking at the facts. But one of my bucket list travel destinations in life is actually to go visit Rwanda. When I was living in DC, huh?
I said
There's a reason. I'll weave it together.
Okay, Trump.
One of my one of my bucket list goals is travel to Rwanda, because in 2019 I actually went to an anniversary march in DC with representatives from the Rwandan embassy, and I had only known about the Rwandan genocide from the movie Hotel Rwanda. But I had a friend who connected me and was like, hey, this would be a cool potential story. I wrote a story about it for a place called the Advocates for Self-Government at the time. And the Rwandan genocide, which took place in the 90s, is one of the ugliest genocides in modern history. I'm not going to say like all of history, because it's like, why do we talk about the Civil War and other wars the way we do? It's because they're better documented. It's because we had reporters. It's because we had photographs and videos. The Rwandan genocide really sits because we talk about the Holocaust and we say never again is now. Well, for Rwanda, it was never again is not happening. And
yep.
I met victims of the Rwandan genocide, and it was one of those things where you look at Rwanda and you look at where it is now, and it's a shining beacon of hope in Africa. And they have some of the best literacy rates. Child mortality is down. They have some socialized healthcare, which I'm not advocating for that, but they're a country that went from you killed like half the population in sectarian violence based off identity politics, and now you've turned it into a thriving, safe country. And I met people there and they're like, Remso, you got to come to Rwanda. And I'm like, I want to one day. I genuinely want to go see it. I say that now because that is a situation that we're in now, where identity politics has just run amok so much. Not saying anything the listeners haven't heard, but to wrap up what I was saying about the one guy I know who's like, I'm not going to vote a third time. I have a client in my business whose company has as part of their core values, critical thinking. And I was like, why is that the case? But like, that's a big deal. And to compare one last person is Glenn Beck. I used to listen to Glenn Beck religiously growing up. Yep. And I have not listened to Glenn Beck in probably 8 years. Mm-hmm. I know that Beck, eventually flipped to be a Trump supporter, and he supported Trump in 2020. And just a couple of weeks ago, he went ahead and actually spoke at a Trump rally. Yep. Here's my thing. I was never Trump in 2016, largely because I listened to Glenn Beck. I listened to Eric Erickson. I listened to a bunch of people. And I eventually got to the point where I'm like, I'm seeing how Trump is. I mean, one of my favorite books by Glenn Beck was Liars, and he has Donald Trump on the cover of that. And I can't look at that book because a lot of the stuff that he said at the time, I don't believe that Beck was lying, but I believe that Beck was misled.
Yep.
And it's one of those situations where I was like, I'm witnessing what I'm seeing right now of Trump, and it's not any of those things that those guys said. I have to stop listening to them. If I'm wrong, just follow them. Yeah.
Just really quick, like, I just want to point something out, because this speaks to the whole J6 thing, believe it or not. Because to your point, right, Glenn Beck, you believe he was misled. I look at a lot of our friends. I'm going to actually, our friends, right? Like, these are folks you and I have met in real life. They're good people, and they make J6 their number one issue. I genuinely believe that a large portion of them are misled, because when I push them, and this is a new thing I've been trying to do, I don't take the assertion of some statement of fact at face value anymore. What I like to do is they'll say, well, then why did Trump do X, Y, and Z on J6? And I'll say, ooh, where'd you hear that? Can you show me that? I want to read that, right? And I push them just to provide some context, provide some data behind what they're presenting. And they'll say, well, look at these articles. And they'll send me 3 or 4 articles, right? MSNBC, CNN, CBS, and I'll start going through. You know what I find, Remso? These articles all source the same anonymous source. So then I go back and I say, well, hold on. All three of these articles are basically playing a big game of telephone. They're sourcing. So like CNN will say a leading reporter at CBS News talked to one of their top sources. You go to the CBS article that's hyperlinked. You go to that CBS article and you read, they talk to this anonymous source who will remain anonymous for integrity purposes or something like that. It's like, oh, so you're basing it on this anonymous source and then playing a game of telephone and creating this entire narrative all based on a rumor from an unsourced point of contact. Whereas actual journalism, folks, I know what we actually support real journalism because real journalism had integrity, like 3 sources on the record who will go ahead and verify what you're saying is true. So instead of just saying we have an anonymous source who said that Donald Trump wanted his generals to be like Hitler. Okay, who are they? Put them on record. Let them go on the news shows. Let them face scrutiny for promoting such a very intense and very divisive narrative, right? And let's see if they can actually back up their words with what they're promoting. And this is the other side of the aisle, Remso. I see folks on our more left side of the aisle who they look at organizations like X or Facebook, and they're saying we need to make sure we crack down on misinformation, on disinformation. You are the main propagators of disinformation and misinformation through your anonymous sources and then hiding behind the fact that the 3-letter organizations, they have some type of credibility. Why? Because their name is CBS or CNN? No, just because you're a big cable news show or news organization with millions of dollars in real estate and office space and big figures like Anderson Cooper, who, by the way, admitted he's way overpaid. I agree.
Anderson Cooper literally said that MSNBC was fake news.
He really did.
Because everyone started going after Anderson Cooper.
Yep. Yeah. So all this, Remso, to say, our squishy friends in the libertarian middle, or independent middle, or centrist middle, moderate middle, whoever you may be, if J6 is your number one issue, all I'm going to ask, I beg, I implore you, please take a step back and actually get beyond the headline, get beyond the narrative, and start actually looking into this stuff beyond what you're told is the truth, what the CNN, MSNBC, CBS folks are telling you is the official narrative. I sell this bumper sticker, question everything, right? Which you can find at briannicholsshow.com/shop. Question everything, especially those folks who are telling you what to think. Now, Remso, if all of this...
and this is why I mentioned Rwanda, because if you want to look at what a real insurrection looks like, you don't have to look too far. Just look at 30 years ago. Insurrections don't have selfie sticks. They have violence, and actual people die.
There's a quote. I like that. All right, Remso, if all this has got your heart all in a tizzy, you need some cardio miracles. So let's go ahead and take a listen.
Hey, folks, I want to take a moment to talk about something that has truly changed my life, and that is Cardio Miracle, our incredible studio sponsor. Now, I'll be honest. When I first heard about Cardio Miracle and their claims about improving heart health, I was skeptical. After using it for just about 2 months, I was absolutely blown away by the results. First, my blood pressure went from being consistently around 140 over 90 to a much more healthier and manageable 120 and over 80, and my resting heart rate dropped from the low 70s to the high 50s, and I couldn't believe it. But the benefits didn't stop there. I started sleeping, and I felt more energized at the gym, and my heart felt the best in years. And it's not just me. Hundreds of you, our amazing listeners, have reached out to share your own incredible experiences with Cardio Miracle. What is Cardio Miracle? How does it work? It's a carefully crafted supplement that harnesses the power of nitric oxide to support optimal heart. So by increasing nitric oxide levels in your blood, Cardio Miracle helps relax your blood vessel circulation, and it protects your heart from damage. It's like giving your heart the support it needs to function at its best. And here's the best part. We've got an exclusive offer just for you, our loyal listeners here at the Brian Nichols Show. Head over to cardiomiracle.com and use code TBNS at checkout. You'll get an extra 15% discount
discount on your
Plus-
order. With
plus,
their
with their
100% money back guarantee, you've got nothing to lose, everything to gain. If you're ready to take control of your heart health and experience the life-changing benefits of cardio miracle for yourself, in the show notes or video description. Your heart, trust me, will thank you, and don't wait another day to prioritize your health. Join the tens of thousands of folks who have already discovered the cardio miracle difference. Head to cardiomiracle.com now and use code TBNS for 15% off your order. Your journey to a happier and healthier heart starts today. And now, let's get back to the show. Alrighty, Remso. Let's go ahead and go to now a different topic. This topic, if you are morbidly obese, this is a transition I never thought I'd be doing. If you're morbidly obese, this might not be good for your heart. I don't know. Trump became a fast food worker. We're just going to go there. I tried to do a transition. It failed. Send your comments and your feedback. We're live, by the way. So go down to below the comments. Say, Brian, here's how you should have done that segue. Donald Trump, our good friend Austin Peterson. By the way, congratulations, Austin. Him and his lovely wife, Stephanie, have a beautiful, beautiful baby girl. I know being a dad is one of the coolest things you will ever do. So awesome shout out there to Austin. But yes, Austin wrote an article over at AMP America, which we are here live Saturday morning on our AMP America Week in Review. Donald Trump from fry cook to front runner. Remso, how Donald Trump flipped the race. I like the little play on words here that Austin sprinkled into this article. Donald Trump goes to Bucks County, PA. He's flipping some burgers at a Mickey D's, and oh my gosh, Remso, the reaction on the left and the right, pretty funny, pretty interesting to say the least. I see folks on the left who, for how many years, have been arguing about Fight for 15. Now they see Trump as a fast food worker, saying, "Look at this freaking loser. That's where he deserves to be, in a kitchen flipping burgers at McDonald's. That's a real job for him." I'm like, oh, so you actually hate the people who are lower income and working that kind of job. Thanks for letting your true colors show. On the right side of the aisle, seeing folks, just embracing the authenticity of, yeah, this is how average people do stuff, right? And obviously this is a photo op. Obviously this is a PR stunt, but there is, just to your point earlier, right? There is something authentic about seeing Trump playing fry cook here, that just, it connects with the average voter, especially back to what I said, when you have the other side of the aisle saying, oh, well, that's because he's a loser, right? So, Remso, talk to us about this article here from Augie.
Austin, I don't know if he says it in the piece. I know he said it on X earlier in this week, but he was speaking to somebody from the Clinton campaign years ago, one of Bill Clinton's former strategists, and he said that a good campaign, is made up of a bunch of images that mark, that mark moments that basically bring about someone's strong emotions: sadness, happiness, humor. JFK was really good about that. Yeah, I mean, if we want to use Bill Clinton as an example, I mean, I think one of the most famous images of Bill Clinton is when he's playing the saxophone on
Saxabloom. Yeah, sorry,
like,
the Jack Blackism.
Yeah, like he was really good about that. And Obama was really good about that. Obama going and standing in front of the Superman statue in Illinois.
I was thinking of when Obama would go on to, who would he sit down with? Oh my God. He would sit down on Fox News with Brett Baer, maybe it was. I forget. Oh, no, it was Bill O'Reilly. And he would go through his picks for the Super Bowl and stuff. Like, yeah, a dude's dude. We always talk about sports, football. Go Bears.
And I mean, I kind of look back at Obama 2008, and I mean, I don't think that anyone outside of Trump has really been able to master the art of just looking normal. And I mean, I'm saying this from a purely objective view. Obama 2008, and I was only in 8th grade, so keep that context. But like Obama 08, it was hard to dislike him. And when you look at Trump and you compare him to Harris is littering Wisconsin and other battleground states with Spotify ads. I can't go a single Spotify break because I'm not paying for that without hearing Harris talk and everyone else. And she's all over YouTube. Like, she has to pay for the type of attention that Trump is literally getting it getting for free. And people were attacking Trump. They're like, he's not even spending money on ads. It's like, why? When he's getting millions and millions of dollars in just free advertising. I mean, that was his strategy in 2016.
Hey, Remso. Hey, that's your name. Hey, Remso.
Hey.
No, but actually, one thing I just want to point out here too, right? This is why the weird narrative took hold back in July, right? Trump is weird. JD Vance is weird. And then Barron Trump, God bless Barron Trump for having the vision to tell his father to get his ass on podcasts. Because what we're sharing here on screen for the video, for the audio listener, is it was the top caption, or the top comment rather, under the Theo Von interview with JD Vance on Theo Von's podcast.
It's a funny interview. Did you watch that?
It was amazing. It was so authentically real, right? And this is the comment for folks playing along in the home game who aren't seeing the screen. I can't believe I was told this guy, JD Vance, was weird. Most normal MF mother effer I've ever heard talk. Remso, right? Like, that is why that narrative existed, because they knew as soon as, like, JD Vance, a normal dude from Appalachia, and Donald Trump, who can present himself as a normal dude, start having conversations with folks as normal dudes, that's going to resonate. Whereas Kamala Harris cannot have a 5-minute conversation without a teleprompter.
She said no to Joe Rogan.
What an idiot.
Yeah. Like
give me channel my inner Will Ferrell and Wedding Crashers. Like, what an idiot. Good. More for me and you.
Yeah. It's just one of those moments where it's like she's incapable of that. And I mean, Trump has been able to get people to like him. And I think the funniest thing too is, like, I keep seeing like all these really hot women on X who are posting photos of their MAGA hats and their I voted stickers and everything. I'm seeing, like, Bryson Hall is a YouTuber I've liked watching. What? And, Bryson Hall became a bare knuckle boxer. And I never knew that Bryson Hall was remotely conservative. And you've got Bryson Hall and George Jenko, Logan Paul. Logan Paul was made fun of for years as a soft lefty who sang platitudes to BLM in 2020, while his brother Jake was always a lot more openly conservative. And now you've got both Paul brothers endorsing Trump, and you've got all these people. I mean, every day it's like somebody just completely random. And what that's done is, people, I think, somebody,
by the way,
yeah.
I found the clip. I found the clip of JD Vance and Donald Trump reacting real time. They heard that Kamala Harris wasn't going to go on podcasts.
Oh. What an idiot. Oh, what a loser. Good. More for me and you.
that was a real time reaction, folks. That's how exclusive we get here at the Brian Nichols Show. We actually have cameras on the wall in the decision making rooms between Trump and JD Vance. So just to give you a heads up.
Yeah, but it's like, they've gotten people to the point where it's like you look at Trump serving fries, and it's like, this is the guy they're telling you is a threat to democracy.
Yep.
And I love what some other people have said.
Well, did you know that Adolf Hitler ate French fries too, Remso? You knew that, right?
Laura
and Adolf Hitler said words, with inflections, and had feelings, and he had a pet. He had a dog. If you have a dog, you are Hitler.
Speaking of hot women for Trump, Laura Trump was on Charlemagne the God's Breakfast Club show.
Was she? I missed that.
She was. That was like last week, and she just ate them alive. But what was funny is, they're like, we're really afraid that he'll start World War III, and we're really afraid of the words that, he says. And Charlemagne, I mean, I don't know what dirt they have on him. He must have gone to a Diddy party. But now Charlemagne is going out and essentially campaigning for Kamala. Anthony Scaramucci too. So sad to see these, rather intelligent men who, have questionable moral character.
Oh, and by the way, speaking of hot chicks for Trump, Megyn Kelly was over on Bill Maher. Was it this past week? And just obliterated Bill Maher. Like, you see kind of like the son of a bitch, Megyn. Why are you a really good lawyer and able to, like, just deal with my nonsense in real time? And she neutered him. Pardon the expression. Like, she was like, oh, Bill, come on. And just like, Megyn Kelly has that tactic of that lawyer approach where she knows where she's going, and she'll help you set up, like, help me get there, and now you've gotten to the top, I'm gonna fucking push you right off the cliff. So sorry, continue.
But Megyn Kelly and Laura Trump, they both said the same things on both interviews, which is, you had 4 years of him. There were no wars. The sectarian violence was mostly at an all-time low in recent history.
And he left office.
and he left office. It's like all these things that you're afraid of, you already have the case study. Like why, like you're acting like he's never been president before. And that's a big thing too. And I mean, it wasn't that Trump was just like the least destructive president. It's that he was actually a net positive for America. It's that the country was actually in a net positive position for once forever. And I mean, here's my ranking of presidents just based off the amount of destruction they have caused. And the least, I'll start with the least. And I was born in 94, so I was a Clinton baby. But like in terms of my presidential rankings, it goes Trump, Bill Clinton, Obama, Biden, Bush. Because Bush destroyed the 21st century. Biden. Biden.
We've done that many a time.
Biden is basically making things as bad, if not worse, than when Bush was president. Obama solidified everything Bush did and tried to make it permanent. Clinton actually, while he made a lot of mistakes, like he saved a lot of people a lot of money. The economy was good. He largely left a lot of things off the table. People forget this. Compared to today, social conservative in the 90s.
And by the way, that was a tactic. It was called triangulation. They were trying to balance everything, and Dick Morris was his lead strategist, and that's how Bill Clinton was able to not just win, but govern effectively.
Yeah. So, and I'm not even saying I like Bill Clinton. No. I'm not even saying Bill Clinton's a good person. I'm just saying as president, and he did a lot of heinous shit too. Mm-hmm. He should have not been impeached for the blowjob. He should have been impeached for selling grave plots at Arlington Cemetery. He should have been impeached for a lot of insider shit with Hillary. He should have been impeached over Kosovo and other things. There are a lot of reasons. But and then you have Trump at the top of my list because Trump for once was a
insider shit.
Insider shit.
just with Hillary of all people, Remso. Phrasing, my friend. Phrasing.
But then you have Trump at the top of my list because he actually made the country net better. People's lives were better. And if you want to look at things from like a Gladstonian, global liberal type of thing, the world was in a better place. A quarter of the population of Ukraine is dead. Quarter of the population of Ukraine is dead. Over 500,000 Russian men that we know of are dead. A whole generation of two countries dead.
Gone.
Would not have happened under Donald Trump.
They talk about the war a lot. Right? How we need to send millions of billions of dollars overseas to continue this forever war without talking about the very real consequences of said war.
You can make up money. You can always compensate money. It's can't bring people back who are dead.
No, there's one of you, right? And at the end of the day, that is something I think a lot of folks are waking up to. I don't want these bloodthirsty monsters at the head of the state to be able to just arbitrarily send my brothers and sons and fathers of our country overseas to go fight some rich man's war. That mentality has very much started to dissipate, I would say, in the American political discourse. And Remso, thank God, we're at a point now where more and more folks are starting to wake up and say no more. And going back to the podcast bro circuit, right? Like for every person who freaks out and is like, oh, well, he's just going to be curating votes with the bros. Okay, great. Yeah, well, guess what? They're the folks who would be sent overseas, right? And this matters to them. So instead of just like, and this is an overarching theme I've had, instead of just dismissing concerns of people, we need to really make sure we're paying attention to the why they got to the point where they are with those concerns. And I had this conversation on a different podcast with a mutual friend of ours recently. And I was asking because they kept on bringing up the fact that, well, half the GOP is a cult. They're all MAGA, right? 47%, I would say, are all MAGA. And I said, okay, time out. Just get rid of the hate of this group of people. And I want you to just objectively take a step back, and I want you to answer this question. Not you, this is on the show. I was like, why do they support Trump? Why? Oh, well, because they've been told what they need to... No. Why do they actually support him? What was it that pulled them towards him? Republicans have had all these candidates over the past how many years, from Mitt Romney to John McCain to George Bush to just go through all the way from Reagan down to Nixon, and Trump represents some unique evil. Why is he getting so much gravitational pull towards him? And they can't answer it, Remso. They cannot acknowledge the elephant in the room, that this like dismissal of concerns, this you're a bad person for raising up a concern, oh, you're so privileged, like this entire narrative that has been perpetuated, especially over the past 20 years with the DEI perspectives, right? It has alienated men. It has alienated your independent thinkers, and it's pushing the Democratic Party further and further into their own little bubble, which, by the way, has been consistently one of my main warnings to the libertarian movement, is that the more you start to say this is who could be a libertarian, and that gets smaller and smaller and smaller, guess what? You're going to have a smaller group of people who are your pure libertarians. 2 thumbs up. Good. Go have your circle jerk and read your books. Nobody cares. But in terms of actually making a difference and getting a movement together to help make things better, what are you doing to attract new people? And that is where Trump is such a unique threat, right? Is not in his delivery and not what he says. It's what he's able to mobilize. And in this case, it's a group of folks who have been disaffected for years and years. And finally, someone, this is where Glenn Beck got it right, even back in the 2010s, Remso. Trump, he called it the Bubba effect, right? Where you're going to have some dude who's just a big sloppy dude who's like, you know what? I got grease on my shirt. I'm rough and tough, and I'm brash, but I'm going to tell you exactly what I think, even if it's wrong. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think in the most authentic way I can. And I'm going to listen to folks who have issues, and I'm going to try to be the champion for these issues, right or wrong, right? And he did that. He was able to get a group of folks to look to him and say, finally, someone is the big middle finger to this a political elite establishment mindset. And you don't have to embrace Trumpism, Republicanism. It was a welcome mat to anybody who just felt like they had been turned away. And that right there is why Trump is such a unique candidate. And back to the main point here, why he is such a unique threat, not to the American democracy, but a unique threat to the status quo, bureaucratic, political establishment. Remso, I'm going to get off my soapbox before we go to our last bit here and let you take home this piece before we go into our final topic for today.
I was really thinking about it during a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday. She works in donor relations development. She's the fundraiser, was the fundraiser, big Ayn Rand objectivist, like classical liberal type, hung around all the DC circles. And now she lives in the Midwest and she works for a smaller organization. And, she found Jesus. She realized that Trump was not Hitler. And, she lost a lot of friends in the process because she had to rediscover who her identity was. And her identity online was largely just like the super libertarian, feminist type person. And she has explicitly told me that's not who I am anymore. And, I don't think I can put myself in a box. And as she was talking about herself, I almost felt like she was talking about me in a way. And the thing I had to kind of tell her was, for years, and I mean, for people who remember me from like Remso Republic and, like Freedom Works and The Blaze and all this other stuff, like I'm not famous, but like among the circles, like people knew who I was and I liked the attention. I was young and I wanted to be big and I wanted to have, I did a whole thing to try and get on The Blaze back in 2016, 2017. And that was big. I got a bunch of signatures, got ignored, had opportunities come up, had opportunities shut down. Like I wanted to be popular. And the thing is that I tried to contort myself to fit in the box. And, now years later, I'm in a very unique position in my life and I'm very happy of where I am. And as she's telling me this, I'm like, I have had to understand that ego is not the enemy. Ego is not necessarily my friend. Ego is just a state of who we are. And at the end of the day, I am the greatest mystery into myself. I just go where I try and go where I can make an impact and where I feel like I should go. And I will make decisions based off what I feel and not what I feel like I have to do because somebody told me. And ultimately, as I have, come across this political journey myself, and I find myself voting in a battleground state, which by the way, I voted early. Vote early if you can, bank your vote. I'm not even voting for Donald Trump. I'm voting for myself because I don't believe the world is getting in a better place. I do believe that him and the Republicans right now, and like you said, if they screw up, I'll be the first person to say it, are largely not an existential threat to my life. And I don't like what I'm seeing for my family. I don't like what I'm seeing for my community. And I want to live in a better place. Will it be perfect? No. Will it be better? It'll be better than this. So that's what it comes down to. And if he is the messenger, if he is the vehicle, if the people around him are the people he's around, you know, it took more courage for RFK to drop out of the race and team up with a rival who he had been attacking for over a year and a half and had been sparring with very publicly for years before and during his presidency, than it did for Kamala to you know, throw a coup over a sitting president and tell us that, you know, we're too stupid to understand that, you know, the last 4 years didn't happen.
The unique threat.
I'm voting for myself. And a vote for Trump is a vote to free Ross Ulbricht too. Libertarian Party members, listen, if you want your fucking drug kingpin to live, you have to vote for Trump, because a vote for Chase Oliver thinking that he'll actually become president is a vote for Ross Ulbricht to die. Okay. To die in prison. Like that's just that. So that's my mea culpa on a lot of things. That's what I gotta say about that.
All right, folks, if this conversation has you feeling tired, right, and you're just like, man, I need some energy to get through the rest of this campaign. Well, guess what? I got a good news for you. I went to school. I talk English. I have good news. I can do this. Don't worry. Coffee. It is what keeps Brian here at the Brian Nichols Show powered, and I only drink one type of coffee, and that is Clockham Craft coffee. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
Is your morning brew leaving you uninspired? Well, it's because mass-produced coffee sits on shelves for months, losing flavor by the minute. Why start your day with stale bean water? Enter Clockham Craft Coffee. From COVID era hobby to farmer market sensation, Clockham Coffee is redefining Their small batch roast ensure that every cup is bursting with flavor. So folks, don't settle for less. Choose Clockham Craft and taste the difference that passion. And by the way, Brian Nichols Show listeners enjoy 10% off your order using code BNS10 at clockhamcraft.coffee in the show notes. And now, let's get back to the show.
All right, Remso. Well, apparently everybody in corporate journo world is freaking out because apparently a lot of these large institutions out there who are you know, journalistic icons, beacons of free speech, have for the first time in decades decided not to endorse a presidential candidate. This all kind of started here this past week with the LA Times deciding, yeah, we're not going to endorse not just anyone, but specifically, I mean, that's them saying we're not endorsing Kamala Harris. And then this was quickly echoed by Jeff Bezos and the Washington Post. So suddenly, Remso, we're finding ourselves here with two newspapers, and I'm sure that we're going to see a bunch more follow suit, saying, you know, maybe we're going to sit this one out. Maybe we're not going to destroy our credibility with half of our readers, or, you know, a portion of our readers who aren't on board with the Harris camp, the Harris train, whatever you want to call it, the Harris home. I don't know. But with that, there's a change. There's an obvious change, but inside these institutions, journos are freaking out. I mean, the Washington Post, they're saying, well, I thought democracy dies in darkness. We need to take a stand. But all I see, Remso, is just backing up my point I made earlier, right? To all my friends again, where are you getting your news from? Oh, I sourced this from the Washington Post. Well, guess who the Washington Post wanted to endorse? Not the organization, but the folks who comprise the Washington Post. All these lefty goobers out there who are like, Trump's evil. And they're the ones who are writing the articles that you source saying that Trump's some inherent threat. And now you see the banshee reaction. I don't get how our friends don't get this. Like, do you not see how A plus B equals C? Like, guys, I know that we like to tout logic and reason, and that's sometimes the autistic part of being a libertarian that pushes people away. I would hope at the very least y'all could see this and put the pieces together, but apparently y'all can't. So with that being said, Remso, we're seeing like absolutely a change right now in the American electorate, which this also couples with a new poll that came out here. The number 2 issue, by the way, the number 2 issue here, I'm actually going to bring this up as I'm vamping. When we go to look at what the top issues are for the American electorate here in 2024, here we go. Look at this. The number 2 issue, Remso, has become free speech. 63% of Americans say that free speech is now ranked the second most important issue for this upcoming election, more important than healthcare, crime, and immigration. Remso, the writing's on the wall. What say you?
Dude, it's not just that, the Washington Post said that they're not endorsing somebody. The Washington Post, I would almost say, is more shocking because of a policy change they made. So the LA Times went ahead and said that they're just not endorsing anyone this cycle. The Washington Post said not only are they not endorsing anyone this cycle, they're done permanently endorsing. And I always thought it was weird when editorial boards endorse candidates, because it's almost like saying, oh, so you were biased in this matter. And you could say, well, it's split newsrooms, Remso. It's editorial and news. And yeah, I know that. I worked in a newsroom. Like, you have your editorial team and then you have your news team. The news team at the Washington Times when I was there was a pretty mixed bag of people. In terms of editors and reporters, but everyone knows that the editorial board for the Washington Times is conservative, and they made
the Washington Post though. They're all
whereas the Washington Post, it's like there's no one there who's Republican anymore, and that goes for editorial and for news. I mean, the last guy I know who was an editor there was actually a former boss of mine named Joe Type, and he went from the Post to the Times around the same time that I got there. Joe was there for about 6 months more than me, and I don't necessarily know Joe's politics, but Joe was like, hey, listen, like, this has become like the Bezos Post. Okay. Like, this is, we can't run it like this, because it became very, very glad handing with, criticisms of Amazon work conditions and Jeff Bezos, as a whole. So he left to go to the Times. But, I was always like, like the Times didn't even endorse anyone in 2016. They went ahead and endorsed, Trump in 2020, and I think they did the same thing this year. But it's one of the situations where it's like, I don't think newspapers as a whole I don't think they should endorse, and even if they have a bias, I would much rather them keep it to themselves, because then stuff like this happens. And what's funny is a bunch of people from the LA Times and the Washington Post, after those decisions were made by their boards, a bunch of people quit. To which it's like, oh, what, you can't be objective in your reporting because they didn't endorse your person? What does that say about you?
Mm-hmm.
I always said this when I was in media, in and out, even with AMP America. It's like, listen, I straight up tell you my bias. I've done some reporting, but like I've mostly ever been an editorial guy, an opinion writer. That goes back to 2015 when I started writing. I've never been, a reporter, but like you gotta be able to like work within those systems and understand it. So, to your point, though, I think the fact that they have just refused outright. I see this a lot in like the Arab community, for example, in Northern Virginia. I have friends who are Muslim who are being told that their wives are being told by each other, who would traditionally vote Democrat and stuff like that, to either vote for Jill Stein or don't vote at all, which is code for you can vote for Trump because that's okay now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's less of what they do say. It's more of what they don't say. And then you've got people like Warren Buffett who is saying, I'm not going to endorse anybody. Why is Warren Buffett saying that? Because Warren Buffett doesn't want Berkshire Hathaway stock to start crashing, because he can't do one without the other. I almost get that more than anything else.
By the way, Remso, don't mean to interrupt, but this also goes back to a past conversation you and I had with the Teamsters, right? Refusing to endorse Kamala. And you look at the polling, because 2/3 of their members support Trump.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, these endorsements, it's not that the endorsements so much matter if they're from like the typical people. It's the non-endorsements, especially from Democrats, because Democrats know what happens when you endorse a Republican. But to not endorse anyone, it's almost like lacking that moral courage that we've talked about. And Zachary Levi, the actor from Shazam and from Chuck, he straight up said it. It's like, this is not that time to go ahead and, not say anything. If you're a conservative in Hollywood, you might as well pick a side now, because you're not going to be safe either way. You might as well live your truth. Like I saw a past episode, it's like, being a Republican is like being gay in the 80s. Like, stop with the code shit. Just come out and say it. It's like, Elon Musk has been saying, like, put up your Trump sign, wear your shirt, wear your hat. I've worn another hat that said "Make Wisconsin Great Again." I wore the red hat to go to my local grocery co-op, which is basically all run by leftists, and that was a fun experience. But like, it's like I'm just done. In the last 4 years, especially since I lived in Wisconsin, I was very much like, I'm just done. I'm not gonna do anything, because especially everything after 2020 in Parler, I was just like, I just gotta like live my life. But like, you'll never be safe. So you might as well live like a freaking freak, if it means that at least you have the right to live. At least you're not gonna let anyone be confused by you. So
I'll finish this piece here as we're wrapping things up today with a little carry forward of what we talked about before, and this piece here. This speaks to when we look at folks like Brian Stelter, right? And they come on to the news and they try to present themselves as some non-biased, objective source of truth.
Dude,
right?
Brian Stelter's like my age.
Is he really?
He's like a few years older than me, and he just
Oh,
looks like, I know I've
man.
got a baby face, but like Brian Stelter looks like he's in his late 40s. Like, Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
Gen X did not hit Stelter well. Well, that or the
I have a much
estrogen.
higher T count, by the way.
I was gonna say it's the estrogen injections he's been getting.
I like my steaks. I like my weights.
The future is female, and Brian Stelter is trying to lead the way. But no, look at
my
Brian.
guns. I like my jujitsu. It's like,
And Brian Stelter likes
men. I know that he's married to a woman, but
didn't expect that. But no, look at Brian Stelter when he sits on TV and he tries to present himself as some objective, non-biased source of truth. And it goes back to what we were talking about with the authenticity, right? Right now, people are starving for authenticity. They are starving for something that feels real, right? And there's something, I think we're going to look back, 30, 40 years from now, people are going to look at the COVID era and just acknowledge how much that fundamentally broke people's ability to feel they have connection to something greater, because all of a sudden you took people out of their little networks and their little ecosystems, and you put them into their homes, completely locked them away, and then for 3 years told them that even if they felt healthy, they could still be dangerous from a virus that apparently has a 99.9997% survival rate, right? So there was definitely some shit planted in people's brains that broke people. And I looked to somebody like Brian Stelter, who will sit there.
I need to cut you off, and I just want to emphasize this. Brian, you're the only person in, remotely libertarian media that still talks about the lockdowns.
I know.
You're the only one that's still, like, for 4 years, you have not let them get away from it. And I think that's very telling, because a lot of people just wanted to forget about it. A lot of people wanted to be accepted because it wasn't the sexy topic anymore. But like, you've been the only one in 4 years that continues to remind people of that.
Well, and let's rip the Band-Aid off, right? Like, the lockdowns were super personal for me, because I watched not just as where I lived in Philly. Now, granted, Philly's not like some bastion of freedom at all, but it was a place to live. I had a job there. And then all of a sudden to see literally within a day told that my job is not essential. I can't travel to work. All of a sudden watching all of my favorite places like that I used to frequent in Philadelphia, restaurants, stores, you name it, closing down because they can't make ends meet. There's one restaurant we used to go to all the time. It was a local farm to table restaurant. They would source all their ingredients from local farms in the area. Closed down within a week because they had like $100,000 worth of product that just gone like that. Because guess what? Food doesn't just stay in your fridge for a year, 2 years. And then when the government says, okay, you can flip your sign around to say, yes, we're open, and it's all going to be there. No. So they close. And then to see what it did to people. And this is the part where I can't let it get away. When I see people that I grew up with, spent years like building relationships and friendships and brotherhood with, within weeks of this whole insanity starting, turning not just on like common sense, logic, rational thinking, critical thinking, but turning on people that they know and they love because the TV told them so and it made them scared. And I have, pardon my language, I have fuckheads like Brian Stelter sitting there on CNN telling them that I'm dangerous because I'm asking them to think. I'm asking them to take a step back and actually critically evaluate what they're being told and what the actual objective data is telling them. I'm asking them to say, hey, if we're being told in one breath that the vaccine is not going to, or rather, the vaccine is going to stop you from transmitting the virus, and it's going to stop you from getting the virus, and then we can see objectively that's not the case, and yet you still believe whatever the people on the TV are telling you. Dude, I mean, groomsmen, right, that were in my wedding, standing up next to me on the altar, I haven't talked to in years because they look at me now as some unique inherent threat to health, to the American way of life, and it breaks my heart. So when I look at people like Anderson Cooper, Chris Cuomo, Brian Stelter, go through the fun list of all these fun folks over on these organizations who perpetuated this nonsense year after year after year, and they've broken the brains of some very, very good people, and genuine, like there are good people who were terrified, right? They got so scared of what was being promoted on TV. And for me to see that in real time and fast forward 4 years and I get told I'm not supposed to talk about this anymore because it's not sexy, because it's not the thing that's leading the news. Fuck that. I'm going to keep talking about it because I saw what happens when you don't have people who are aware of what's happening, willing to stand up and say, no, this is wrong. And we're at the point now where more and more folks are actually starting to stand up and say, no, this is wrong in other topics. And I'm so thankful for that. But we would never have gotten to this point were it not for folks. Thank you for pointing this out. But like for folks like me, who this has been an issue for me, and it has been something that we can't forget about it because this set the Atlas stone like up the hill and got us to where we are, for better or for worse. Like we'll take the pain, the sacrifices. I get it, but I'm hoping that folks wake up. Because Brian Stelter, when he sits there in his chubby little cheeks and he tells you that he is the arbiter of what is true when it comes to public health. No, I'm sorry. When the former public health minister of Belgium is telling people what health is, and she is a morbidly obese lady, when what's his role? Rachel Levine. When I got a dude who's dressing as a chick telling me what health is, what biology is. No, that's not. No, I'm sorry. I'm done. I'm done playing this stupid game, this make-believe theater kid. And this goes back to the fag energy we talked about. God, you got me all fired up here, Remso. This mentality of this theater kid, like, well, we can make the world whatever we want. We can write the script. Fuck you. No, you can't. No, you can't. There is a thing we live in called the real world, objective real world. And when you play these games, there are very real consequences in that real world, despite you thinking that you're the puppet master. You can make things work the way you want. No, you can't. And I'm going to get off my soapbox here with just one last piece. Yeah. Please.
I hope we can keep the show going for like 5 more minutes because I forgot the most embarrassing endorsements and non-endorsements of the week.
Oh yeah, no, we got this. But my last piece before I let you do that, please, if this hits you as I'm speaking to this, and there's a little bit of like uncomfortability because you're like, that was me during COVID. It's okay. Like all I'm asking is to please just take a step back and you don't have to say it out loud, but just take some ownership. Like. Just be like, yep, I fucked up. I trusted the wrong folks. That's okay. I've done that before. That's how I became a libertarian, because I trusted the wrong folks in politics. But it takes that moment of self-reflection and the ability to stand up and say, I was wrong. So that's my soapbox. Remso, bring us home.
Reason Magazine's endorsements.
I had an article or a post. Vamp, I'll pull it up.
Speaking of stuff, I know we had another story, but I mean, this itself is just where I think we should go. But like Reason Magazine, not one writer or editor at Reason Magazine is voting for Trump. And you've got like 3 that are openly voting for Kamala Harris. You've got a whole bunch that are voting for Chase Oliver. And you've got several which are just not voting. You can see, I think that diversity of thought within an organization is fine. But what does it say that there is not one single Trump vote at Reason Magazine? What they have completely done is over the years they have really tried to push out anyone that has remotely conservative, remotely, right of center views. As one reason why I didn't get an internship at Reason magazine years ago, because they asked me and I thought that this would actually make me look good. They asked me, what is one thing that you think Reason has done publicly that you don't agree with? And I was like, well, this was like in 2018, 2019, when Mark Sanford of South Carolina, the guy that went hiking in like Argentina or whatever. I was like, you guys keep propping him up as like this libertarian messiah, not because he's really libertarian, but because you don't like Trump. And I feel that each time somebody remotely does that from the right, you instantly make them like an icon. And I don't think that's objectively like consistent. And I don't think that's intellectually honest. And I just got like silence on the phone. And obviously I didn't ever go work at Reason, but you said
the truth a little too truthfully.
I had an editor at a nonprofit I was at who was an editor at Reason for like 3 weeks, and it was so bad. And he's Mark Licheron. Mark Licheron doesn't believe in the internet, so I know he'll never see this. But like Mark Licheron was at Reason as the editor for like I remember making a joke. It's like he was there for at least like a couple Scaramucci's, which is like 5 weeks. But like he was a pretty. Is
that a new context of time?
Saying that for years, like we
should go into the SNL skit where they're doing like the. Have you seen that? The George Washington. He's like, we're gonna have a new American way of measurement. It'll be called the foot. And how many centimeters to a foot? Impossible.
I've been measuring things by Scaramucci's for years. That's how much of a nerd I am. But like Mark Licheron was like, pretty right of center compared to everyone at Reason, and he just did not last there very long, and it was because of that. But I think the fact that Reason magazine, you don't have a single Trump voter. But again, you've got multiple people voting for Kamala Harris. And, oh my gosh, I didn't even see the Nikki Haley write-in.
Yeah, so for folks who are playing on the home game, we're sharing it on the screen right now. I captured this Reason voting article. 12 Chase Oliver voters, many of whom have horribly mean things to say about the LP. By the way, these are direct copy and paste I took from the article. So 12 Chase Oliver voters who, of course, hate the LP because reasons. 6 non-voters, thanks for doing nothing. 3 Kamala Harris voters, many of whom have horribly mean things to say about Harris, but that doesn't stop them. 1 Nikki Haley write-in, because Reason is definitely, I guess a neocon organization. I don't know. 1 Kennedy write-in, not RFK Jr., but the Fox News host. I get it. And then 2 undecideds, one who is 50-50 for Trump or Oliver, the other is 50-50 for Trump or nobody. So we take all that, Remso, all of that, right? And that equals maybe 2 Trump voters, but one of whom might go to Oliver and the other one who might not vote at all. So if let's just say they don't vote for Trump, that's 13 Olivers, 7 non-voters, 3 Harrises, 1 Haley, and 1 Kennedy, not RFK.
Like, what the fuck?
Like, what do you want us to say, Reason? Like, and by the way, I'm friendly with a lot of the guys over there. Like Nick Gillespie, I chat with him quite a bit. Elizabeth Nolan Brown, I chat with her every now and then. Oh God, her name just literally popped out of my head. Just asking questions, girl. The hell's her name? Who is that? Just Asking Questions podcast. I'm gonna see her name and be like, I know her. Good grief, Brian. Liz Wolfe. There we go. And she's more right-leaning, I would say. She was the one actually who, no, hear me out. On the Chase Oliver podcast, the interview with Chase Oliver on Just Asking Questions, Liz Wolfe was the one person who I think did an amazing job of holding Chase's feet to the fire on the transgender kids issue. And she did a 7-minute segment with him where she would not let him get away with the mealy mouth, well, it should go to be a decision between the doctors and the parent. She's like, well, what's the argument then if the kid wants to chop their arm off, right? And she held him to be like ideologically consistent. You have a different opinion. Tell me why.
It's not worth it.
Okay. We'll talk off air. So, and by the way, I'm not saying that those folks are like bastions of sanity or logic or reason, right? Pun intended. But I can at least have a conversation with them. Now, that's not to say that it's always great or it's always we agree, but we can at least have a dialogue. But when I look to see, no, there's no Trump voters. There's nobody. Like even in our We Are Libertarians group that I like to just toss grenades and walk away from, I see that there are at least some Trump warm folks or folks who are openly voting for Trump. The fact that there is zero folks at Reason who are planting their flag saying I am voting for Trump, it's a red flag.
Yeah, it's because they still want to, they still want to, be able to like, interview Jake Tapper, and they still want to be, like, well, we're not left, right, or whatever. We're in the middle. They still want to play this game because it's self-serving.
Yep.
It's self-serving, and Reason has largely just been like Cato. You just know that ultimately, like, they think that half the country is retarded.
That's 1,000% it. Like, they don't know what's best for them.
The condescending nature, like, I get it because I used to kind of believe some of that. It took me having to move out of the coast and back into the Midwest to really kind of understand like this condescending nature of things. Like, it's like, well, they just don't understand economics. It's like, no, it's that you're threatening to put their job under and you're not providing a solution. It's like all this other stuff. And it's like, how can I take you seriously on those things when you're voting for Kamala? It's like, I would like to see reasons, and they didn't really, I would like to see reasons from Reasons. It's not that they even gave a case for Kamala, but it's just like, well, it always just comes down to, I just don't like Trump.
Yep.
And that's what it comes down to. But like, I think a couple other folks were just like, there's an entire section of the libertarian movement. Reason used to be pretty, diverse in opinion, but now it's like this metropolitan, cosmopolitan libertarianism that is why so many people have like dropped Cato from so many things. It's why,
by the way, I listen to the Reason Roundtable every week. I hate listening to it usually, but I want to listen to it because I want to make sure that I'm not talking bullshit. I want to make sure that I hear the vast differences of opinion, and I can make sure I'm objective in how I'm critiquing. And I'm going to say it. The only person on that podcast who even offers the like right side of the argument is Nick Gillespie. And Nick's not a right leaning guy, but Nick will at least say, here's what the argument is. And he will, in good faith, position the argument. Then he will destroy it based on his own personal biases, which is fine. But he's at least giving the real argument out there.
They propagate like the worst lies though. And I wrote an article at And Magazine in 2018, 2019 about the Liberty Con, which was put on by Students for Liberty in DC. And like Matt Welch was on stage basically like jerking off Bill Weld, who was propagating the Trump Russia hoax.
Bill Weld, who is now a proud Kamala Harris voter, by the way.
Yeah, and it's like, they intentionally went out of their way to really elevate Bill Weld, who just really did not give a shit about anybody, and is a very nasty, rude person, by the way. He took a seat from me because I was sitting in his seat, which wasn't really his seat, as I found out. That was a whole other thing. But like, like Matt Welch continued to push that. And like, I could be wrong, but I don't think him or anyone else at Reason has ever, come out and said, yeah, the Trump Russia hoax was fake and it was done to delegitimize the president. I mean, they push these things, but then they don't really go back and ever, show an ounce of humility about it. And
or mealy mouth, like tacit endorsements, or at the very least, not if not endorsement, an acceptance of the bullshit COVID policies. Like, well, maybe getting people vaccinated would be better than a mask mandate.
Well, I mean, Robbie from Reason was outwardly shaming people in Alexandria and Arlington, Virginia, for not wearing a mask and for not.
Robbie had a whole post on Twitter. I screenshot it, Robbie, just so you know, where he literally made the argument that he would be in favor of forced vaccinations versus forced masking, and did a 3 or 4 post thread explaining his justification. You don't think that right there speaks to how just fucking out to lunch a lot of these folks are relative to like the core base of who are real libertarians? I think, and by the way, I know Jeremy Kauffman gets a lot of shit. Some of it rightfully deserved, others not so much. Jeremy pointed out something with Reason, and I just want to bring this home. When you have, I think it was a 90% leaning of like one bias over the other, that speaks to that it's not unintentional. There is 100% a reason that we keep on going back to that. There's a reason that reason is promoting this narrative in such a way. And it makes me pause, because I listen to reason, I read reason, and I now have to start questioning how much of this is objective or how much of this is you're being told to publish this, right? And that's where I don't look at them as an arbiter of truth. I mean, I used to look at them as like at least a middle ground. Now I'm like, I don't even know if I take you for that, because I see articles you're posting under the libertarian ethos saying that mask mandates maybe could be okay, or COVID vaccination for forcing COVID vaccines. Maybe that's okay if we can get rid of forced masking.
Liz Wolfe did a whole thing basically saying that RFK was like a threat to like truth and
She
like
did.
everything. And like that was that alone. I mean, that's a whole other thing, but like, you know, like that itself, it's like really question who you're choosing to make enemies of. And I'm not saying don't criticize people. I'm not saying, you know, and I challenge listeners to question, fact check me on the Matt Welch thing. I don't think Matt Welch ever came out and admitted that the Russia hoax was a hoax. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It's been a while, but like I remember him really pushing that and did not do his, journalistic duty of pushing back against Weld, who was pushing that. But like it's just, I'm glad that a lot of people are just kind of coming out with the truth now. I gotta respect it. But and I mean, I have very good friends who are in the libertarian circle. I know one that voted for Biden, but he's not voting for Biden now. It's not that I think that everyone should agree with me. It's that I need them to justify the why, and the why cannot just be I don't like him.
Yep,
it has to be more than that, because otherwise you're just being selfish.
Remso, this has been a great conversation. I have missed having these chats as you were gone last week, but granted, Kenny Cody did a great job sitting not in your chair, but in his. I guess he was standing. I actually think when he did his filling in for you.
Excellent job he did.
Oh yeah, no, and Kenny's a good friend too. So, and he's crushing it, by the way, over at Human Events. He's writing banger articles over there. So go give Kenny Cody some love. Katie Cody TN on Twitter. You can find Remso at Hey Remso on X. And with that, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping things up today, Remso. So where can folks go ahead, learn more about Remso Martinez besides Twitter? I know you got some other ventures going on as well. Hit us with the details.
Well, I mean, check out everything at ampamerica.com. That's Amp America News on X, and that's ampamerica.com, where you get the likes of, folks like Maj Toure, Brian, Nick Freitas, Austin Peterson, the whole Liberty crew. And, because Brian prompted me, you want help with your marketing, your digital advertising and everything, go ahead and check me out, marketerontherun.com. Brian, I've got a brand new website, so check that out.
You do? All right. Well, we're going to have to check that out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, folks, I appreciate you joining us here live on Saturday morning as we do our Amp America Week in Review part of the Brian Nichols Show. I hope you've gotten some value from today's conversation. My show decided to end early.
Caleb Franz has a new book out called The Conductor. It's an Amazon bestseller. Go ahead and get The Conductor by Caleb Franz on Amazon and wherever books can be found.
And how about this? If you're like, what is this? What is this book? I want to learn more before I buy it. If you stick around, if you're joining us here today, you I guess right there, episode, it will be popping up my interview with Caleb Franz, where he talks about his brand new book, The Conductor. It's a great read. Please go ahead, give him some love.
That's a cool Easter egg. It wasn't until I heard his voice, because that's Caleb Franz who does the outro for Brian. I was like, oh, Caleb has a book out.
Awesome. All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and put a pin in today's conversation. Thank you for joining us live on Twitter today, where we were live streaming. If you joined us live, thank you so much. Go ahead, set your clock every Saturday morning between 9 and 11. We'll make sure we have an episode go ahead and air here. Remso's got his Make America Great hat on. I got my Good Ideas Don't Require Force hat on. Plus, I got my Magic Money Tree shirt, which my daughter loved this morning. She goes, ooh, tree, pretty. So you want to go ahead, grab your Magic Money Tree or your Good Ideas Don't Require Force snapback, BrianNicholsShow.com/shop. With that being said, we're going to see you next week. Talk to you later.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at BrianNicholsShow.com.